My name is Dr. George Sparks, and welcome to Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down, sponsored by Bible Interact. Today we're going to actually start the second part of Where the Temple Was Not with Dr. Bobby Sparks. And if you were with us for the first half, if you will, first 30 minutes, we discussed some of the foundations of a very poor hypothesis that the Temple Mount, as we know it today, is actually in the wrong location. And Dr. Sparks has written a book, Where the Temple Was Not Located. And I would encourage people to get this book. It's not very thick. You can read this in a couple hours, lots of good illustrations, and it has good support for its academical basis in the book. So it's got lots of good endorsements by accredited scholars. So today we're going to continue on with Dr. Bobby Sparks about where the temple was not. And at this time, we left off how large those that have tried to move the Temple Mount and say that it was in another location other than where it is, if you will, today. And in moving it, they also enlarged it, and they enlarged it in such a way that it would be taking up more space than what the city of David would actually have at that time. Dr. Sparks, help me out.
Thank you, Dr. Sparks.
Just George.
As far as we know, we're not related, but we have to go back somewhere. And if we don't go back very far, we'll at least go back to Adam.
All right.
Anyway, yeah, we were talking about the complex of the Temple Mount being located down in the old city of David. The old city of David is estimated to be somewhere between 10 and 12 acres in size. The widest part of the old city of David is determined to be 384 feet wide. Now, these guys, Cornuke, Martin, Klein, Joseph, all come along and maintain that the temple complex was located down in the old city of David. Now, the temple complex, and Josephus confirms it, and Martin agrees with it. Cornuke, Joseph, all those guys agree with it because they quote Martin, and they all state, yes, Solomon's temple complex was originally 500 cubits in each direction. Now, it wasn't quite square, it's kind of a trapezoid shape, but that it was, they acknowledged that it was 500 cubits. Now, we typically, for the sake of convenience, make a cubit 18 inches. And if it was 500 cubits at 18 inches, it would mean it would be 750 feet in each direction. However, the cubit in the city of David in the area has really been shown to be about 20.67 inches per cubit. So that 500 cubic square complex would actually be over 800 feet in each direction. Even if we just take the 18 inches, let's just be conservative, and it's 750 foot in each direction. How do you put a 750 foot trapezoid inside a 384 foot wide city? It would totally enclose the whole city. There would be no city left once you put the temple complex in that. It's just not going to fit. They said that our view that the temple was on the Temple Mount is the hoax of the millennium, meaning that we are misrepresenting the facts. Well, I would like for one of them to explain how you get a 17-acre temple complex inside of a 12-acre city and make it fit. Well, It's not going to happen. In their drawings, you're talking about a hoax. In their drawings, they show that the old city of David is expanded bigger than it really was. They diminish the size of the temple complex and make it fit, and then they present their drawing. See, here's where it belongs. Well, it's impossible, and it's not going to work.
Okay. Okay, let me say this. Now, we have the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount's going to be at a height that's above the actual, you could say, house of David, the house of David, and the house of Solomon, if you will. And also, he had the Pharaoh's daughter build a house for the Pharaoh's daughter, right? And it says that when they take the Ark of the Covenant, they take it up to the temple. So it's got to be a higher place of elevation. But as they move the temple, as they move the Karnook and that Scooby Gang, move the Temple Mount further south, it decreases in elevation. That means you have to have more stones to elevate it. And by the expansion of its size, if I'm correct, it has to overlap the area which we call the Ophel, which would be where the palace of David and Solomon would be, and the Pharaoh's daughter's house. Mm-hmm. All right. Also, it overlapped an area that we could look up. If you look it up in archaeology, is called Area G. It's a wall structure, but we'd have to continue. It would actually extend into the Kidron Valley, which is very deep. If you're familiar with the territory, the terrain around Jerusalem, you could see how, I'm going to use the word that's crazy it would be, because when they constructed the Temple Mount during the time period of Solomon and as well as Herod, they took into consideration the terrain features when they built the Temple Mount. We mentioned in the last episode that during Herod, he extended the part further south. And where they extended this, there's what we call a seam in the wall. That means the bricks don't overlap each other. Like if you build a house, the bricks overlap. But when they added the wall, there's actually a seam. And we can identify the different types of bricks, as you mentioned, by the design, just as our type of, you could say, our fashion and fads change. What seems beautiful in the past, might not be so now. So our fashion changes. The trim around the bricks, I shouldn't say bricks, but stones, is actually called a boss. I think it's spelled B-O-S-S. Mm-hmm. Not like the boss you work for. It's the design around the trim of the stone. And the bosses around the stones vary from the Solomon period, from the Herodian period, and we can see this in the seam. Another great indication that you mentioned last time, and I want to make the audience aware of this, that when you get time, other information that you can look up. It's impossible to talk about everything right now. We just kind of assume that people know this. Right. But I wanted to emphasize that this is what we're talking about by the different types of stones. Not only that, the stones that Herod put in there are absolutely amazing, and even mentions in the Bible when the disciples take Jesus, probably on the western side, we don't know for sure, but they say, look how large these stones are. And we can see stones if you take a tour. I think it's called, what is that tunnel? The Temple Mount, there's a little tour through there, and you can stand in front of the stone that is like 14 foot long, 11 foot high. I might be wrong in these dimensions, but that's just facing it, 11 feet, 14 feet long, 11 feet high, but it's also deep, 10, 11 feet deep. We don't know for sure, which makes it over 200 metric tons. I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
How are you going to move that?
Big as a Greyhound bus.
Okay, I went on my little rant there, so go ahead.
So what they do in their diagrams, and I said they create their own definition. Josephus talks about going down the sides of the Temple Mount complex having colonnades. A colonnade is the outside wall is extended higher, then it has a roof, and then it has columns on the inside that's open air to the temple complex. That's all that a colonnade is. And so they have taken that expression of those colonnades and said that Josephus said that there were two bridges that extend from the southwest corner of the Tower of Antonia, and it goes down to the northwest corner of the temple complex. These two 600-foot bridges. And then the temple complex, it joins it at the northwest corner of the temple complex in the old city. That means that the temple complex would cover up the Kidron Valley and create a dam. They would have had
Nice.
a massive lake there. And it would have been built over tombs that
Right,
are
that's right.
on the Mount of Olives, on the eastern side of the Kidron Valley. They would have built the temple in an unclean place. Now, their argument is that the temple was built, the southeast corner of the temple covered Gihon Spring. That was the source of water for the temple, and it was the biggest source of water that they could have used, and it would have been needed for the temple of the city, and that the temple complex covered Gihon Springs. If you measure Gihon Spring from the south wall of what they call the Antonia, and you built a temple there, the temple is going to overlap the wall 54 feet. You can't get a temple to cover Gihon Springs and fit it in between there and the wall of Antonia. It's too big.
You're absolutely right.
And they move things around to make it fit. If that's not a hoax, I don't know what is. And they know better than that. They have to know better than that. And also, let's say that the temple was built over Gihon Springs, as they all affirm. Why in the world did Hezekiah have to build a tunnel down to the Pool of Siloam to bring the water of Gihon Springs into the city? And that's what the scripture says.
Yeah.
If the city already covered it up, there's nothing in Bible history, in Bible archaeology, and in the scripture itself that would place that temple down in the old city of David.
Right. Now, there's, I say within the last maybe 15 years, there's been an excavation in Jerusalem, which they have uncovered where the Pool of Siloam would be during the time period of Jesus. And it's much larger than what we've used to imagine. And this is possibly where, that Jesus paid a visit there. And before, if you went through the tunnel, the Gihon Spring tunnel, and you can actually see a placement in the wall where the inscription, we call it Hezekiah's inscription, of when they actually built the tunnel, right? You can see where that was actually chiseled out, and then it ends at a little pool. And we thought that was the Siloam pool during the time period of Jesus as well. And of course, we were wrong. Nice thing about archaeology is it's not like being a medical doctor. We can say, oops. You don't want to have your medical doctor saying oops, but we can say, oops, we were wrong. So we have this huge structure where people would have went during the time period of Jesus. If we listened to Carnook, this would have been covered up as well, an impossibility. You're right. Yeah.
And also, their argument is that the temple complex covered the southeast corner of the temple complex, covered the Gihon Spring. Now, the Jebusites were there years before the temple was built. They had a small wall there, kind of a wall of protection, I suppose. It wasn't a very large wall. The foundation to that wall is still there.
Right.
The ruins to that Jebusite wall around Gihon Springs are there. Now, if you're going to build a wall there at the southeast corner of the Temple Mount, and they maintain that wall was as high as 450 feet with everything on top. If you're going to build a wall 450 feet high, you're going to go to bedrock. And anything that's in the way between you and bedrock, you have to remove it. Well, they didn't. It's still there. So they say that the temple was built down in the old city of David. Well, like you said, George, they're excavating that old city of David. They feel like they found where David's palace was located.
Right.
They're going to build that massive temple and temple complex in that site. You have to go to bedrock. but David's palace, the foundation of the palace is all still there. All of that would have had to been cleared and cleaned off, and you'd had to put the temple there. And there's no evidence to that effect. The foundations to the original city of David are still intact. And just outside of it, where the temple would have totally covered this up, there was a dump. And they would not have built the temple in a dump.
Okay, not over the tombs. The Kidron Valley's got tombs. You're right. That would have been unclean. That's the difference between Judaism and Christianity. Man, we could put people in the walls of our churches. You ever go to an early, New England church, a colonial church, and they got the bishop, whatever, buried in the floor, and they got the wealthy people buried in the walls of the cemetery around. Not necessarily in Judaism, right?
Right. And on top of that, if they built the temple over the dump, the artifacts coming out of the dump were there hundreds of years before the temple was.
Very good point. Yeah.
So you had to dump your dump underneath the temple.
Okay, let me ask you this. If they're placing their temple where the city of David would be, once again, here's the Temple Mount as we see it today. It's higher. And of course, the city of David in this palace is a little lower, right? But now this is where they're going to put their temple. Where's the city of David located if they're going to do that?
Yeah, they just buried it with the temple. 12-acre city with a 17-acre temple.
Yeah.
And then taking in for the enlargement by the Hasmoneans and Herod, it would have been a lot more. The Temple Mount complex at the top is 36 acres. And so it's 3 times bigger than the old city of David.
So in this illustration right here, over here where the Temple Mount is, this is where they're saying the Roman encampment is. And then if we go further south, this is a rabbinical teaching staircase. Now we'd be in the area called the Ophel. Moving further south, notice the land is going further down in elevation, makes the wall even higher. Now where the city of David would be, you got this huge Temple Mount. This is where the illustration ends. What I'm saying is, okay, now where are they putting the city of David?
Notice how narrow that temple complex is on the drawing. It's not a square or trapezoid. They make it much more narrow to try to make it fit. And the distance from that southeast corner on their drawing up to that wall is just a little over 750 feet. The temple complex would have joined the wall of Antonia.
Now, they do, in ways, directly contradict the scriptural narrative, and also in a way, indirectly contradict it. Now, let me just put this in. It's going to be a little funny, and then I'll be quiet. But if the palace of David, the city of David, has to be lower than the temple, it's probably going to be lower in elevation than the city of Silwan. Across the Kidron Valley, now what the problem would be, that we actually have to have David's palace higher, possibly including area G, because what does David do? He gets himself in really big trouble because he's looking in the morning, he looks over the edge of the Kidron Valley, and what are the ladies doing on the roofs of their houses? Some are taking a bath. That's, as a matter of fact, it's easy to remember. They're taking a bath, Bathsheba. And David says, wow, he's looking down from his palace. But now, if David's palace is too low, she'd have to be looking down at David. The whole thing doesn't make sense, really.
Hey, and
go ahead. I'm just going to that.
In all of their material, all right, all the books they've written, do you know what they do not talk about?
No.
Is first of all, in 1 Chronicles 21, verse 18, David is to go, the scripture said, go up from the city of David, go up. Right. And set up an altar, the threshing floor of Ornan, or Arona, as we pronounce it often. And so he had to go up from the city to build an altar. To set up that altar. Secondly, they do not quote. They do not mention this. They don't bring it up. 2 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 2, they were told once they built the temple It says, bring the Ark of the Covenant out of the city of David, which is Zion.
Mhm.
So they built the temple, and then they were going to bring the Ark of the Covenant and place it in the temple, and they brought it up out of the old city of David. If it was built in the middle of the city of David, they didn't have to bring it up out of. And Josephus said that the temple was built upon a high hill.
You know, it's very interesting. You know what they do when they make these kind of claims? If somebody's really interested, like yourself, it causes us to even examine the evidence even harder. It forces us to study, doesn't it? And we learn more about the Temple Mount. We learn more about the archaeology, and it makes it that much more exciting. And in the process, they prove themselves wrong.
Right.
And now you got all this evidence that says this is the reasons why. And if you guys are the experts, what in the world are you doing? Because with the internet and YouTube, it's pretty, and your book to help as a guide, right? And the illustration in the back, it's numbered. And you can use what you put, all this whole book, and then more information with YouTube if they want to go that far with it and prove themselves, prove themselves wrong.
And then on top of all that, Ernest Martin directly contradicts himself on the location of the temple. He says in one place very clearly that the temple was built on that area between the original old city of Jerusalem and the temple, or the Temple Mount area called the Ophel.
Yeah.
He said it was built on the Ophel. Then he comes back and says at a different time that the temple complex was located in the middle of the old city of David. And then later, he makes a distinctively clear statement, no mistake, that the temple was located in the southern part of the city of David. You can't have it in three different places.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. You know what? People need to, when Dr. Sparks is saying Ophel is spelled Ophel. All right. So but just listening to it, it's hard to understand how it's spelled. Once again, Ophel, if you want to look into that, what the Ophel is also mentioned in, of course, in his book, but just to help you out.
Yeah,
Dr. Sparks.
Yeah, that was an area that had even Solomon had built a wall there connecting the old city of David up to the temple complex. But it was it's kind of an area between the old city of David and the Temple Mount complex itself, and then they inhabited that.
All righty. Hey, at this time, we got about 4 minutes left. What I'd like to do, okay, I'm just going to list a number of archaeological discoveries that proves where the Temple Mount is. And you let us know if this is correct or not. Okay. In other words, I'm using you for peer review.
All right, very good.
Okay. Number 1, artifacts found in the Temple Mount Sifting Project.
All prove that there was a Jewish presence there, and no archaeology for the presence of the 10th Legion.
Okay, number 2, Robinson's Arch, a staircase on the southwest side.
That's located up on the Temple Mount, the traditional side of the Temple Mount complex, not down in the old city of David.
Number 3, the place of the trumpeting stone, removed from its original location in 1967. So the trumpeting stone.
The trumpeting stone was found up on the traditional Temple Mount complex and not where Cornu and that group says it was.
Okay. Number 4, the extremely large stones that can easily be seen that are used for the retaining wall in the temple platform.
That's found up there with the old traditional Temple Mount complex, not down in the old city of David.
Okay, number 5 is what we call the prohibition stone, denying Gentiles access to the more sacred places, which is also called the Sorek, S-O-R-E-Q. So the prohibition stone.
Those stones were found up in the area of the traditional Temple Mount area, and they were not found down in the old city of David.
Number 6, Solomon's stones compared to the Herodian stones with the outline of the bosses?
And that was found in the traditional Temple Mount site, not down in the city of David.
All right, if we're down to that archaeological excavation on the south side, number 7, the marketplace in the Roman period streets.
That was found adjacent to the traditional Temple Mount.
Okay, number 8, the large limestones thrown down that are seen in the marketplace near Robertson's Arch.
They're found in the traditional Temple Mount site, and all of those stones are not found down in the old city of David. They would have buried that old city of David with the massive stones from the temple, but they're not there.
They're not there. All right, number 9, the rabbinical teaching staircase. That's the staircase that leads up to the double and triple gate.
Yes, that staircase goes down south from the Temple Mount complex as we know it.
Number 10, the double and triple gate entryways.
They're down in the traditional Temple Mount complex, not in the old city of David.
Now, you don't even know this list. I'm throwing it at you right now.
All
So
right.
this is not rehearsed, people. Number 11, ritual mikvah baths.
They were located in the southern end of the Temple Mount complex as we know it, both inside and outside.
Number 12, locations of water pools and cisterns.
Underneath that Temple Mount, there were a massive water system. There was a cistern there that held millions of gallons of water. There were springs that brought the water in from outside the area, even all the way from Bethlehem, and they filled up those cisterns underneath the Temple Mount area.
Okay, number 13, the material discarded in antiquities by the east side wall.
On the east side wall, where you would have discarded debris, there is all kinds of Jewish first temple and second temple debris, but no 10th Legion debris.
Okay, number 14, and this is the last one I'm throwing at you now, Hezekiah's tunnel.
Hezekiah's tunnel is underneath the old city of David that connects the Gihon Springs, goes under the city down to the Pool of Siloam. They built the tunnel so they could bring the water inside the old city.
All right. Hey, Dr. Sparks, we are out of time. I threw these things at you. You answered them like on the spot like this. My peer review right there, Dr. Bobby Sparks. I appreciate your time. Once again, where the temple was not located, tons of information in 2-part series. And I hope you enjoy this. Well, I knew you enjoy this. This is great stuff. All right, people, have a great day. Thank you, Dr. Sparks, for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Sparks, for having me on your program.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.